And we're off. All right, folks, welcome to this month's webinar, Brilliant Strategic Failures in AV. This is part of the Intentional Success 2018 series. We're going to do a webinar every month. I'm going to be cranking out a lot of content for you because I have a lot of things I want to share. So thanks for joining. Before we get any farther, I need to thank our sponsors. Of course, Nationwide Video, AV Stumpful USA, Digital Projection, Flex Rental Solutions, Complete Crewing, and a special thanks to DWP Live because I am broadcasting today from their offices in Nashville, looking out their beautiful front windows at all the rain. Thank you guys for letting me camp out here and get my broadcast done from here today. So great folks and wonderful, wonderful hosts. So thank you very much for that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Stimson. I'm president of the Stimson Group. I advise the AV industry. You can find me in all the usual places, but please, stop by the website, trstimson.com, and check things out. Now, let's get down to it. What is today's webinar about? We're going to talk about what strategy actually is, because it's one of those words that all of us use, and I won't say that we use it incorrectly, but we use strategy. We say the word strategy, and we mean a lot of different things with it. So I'll talk about what strategy actually means. We're going to spend some time talking about failed strategies. And don't worry, I'm not calling any of you out. If any of you are listening to find out if I mention you by name, I'm not going to. We're not naming names because there are so many examples of failed generic strategies. And trust me, there aren't that many strategies in the AV industry. But I'm going to talk about how they fail so that you can understand. And you may see yourself in that. And if you do, it's not because I singled you out. There are 4 generic AV strategies, and we will talk through them and what makes them work and what helps them succeed. Now, let me start by saying that intentional strategy is what I'm looking for. As a business advisor, one of my trademarks is intentional success. We work on intentional marketing, intentional strategy, intentional sales, intentional operations. We're doing all the things that we can to help you do the things that you intend to do. It's like, no more talking about it, guys. Let's move on with it. Let's get it done. Intentional strategy is why we do what we do. A lot of people talk about this, but they don't codify it in a way they can share it with their team. Once we know what it is that we want to do and why we want to do it, who do we want to care about it, and why should they care about it, which are 2 different things. And then once they care about, what do we want them to do about it? And this is the essence of all strategy. We've got to answer these 4 questions and do the things, do the tactics that will drive the outcomes that we're looking for. And so strategy is not always as evident as we think it is. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that. So I like to say that strategy is the art of evolving faster than average. Here's the thing. Whether you have an intentional strategy or not, whether you have a strategy or not, or you can define a strategy, the fact is you have one. And that's the important thing. If you take nothing else away today, please understand that even though you haven't done strategic planning, there's no strategy statement on your wall, you have a strategy. And if you don't know what it is, trust me, your customers do. Heck, your employees know what your strategy is because they create one for you. They fill one in. If any of us, we've all done this, we've walked into a store or a restaurant or some other place of business and it immediately felt unwelcome. Immediately felt like we were in the wrong place and that we just needed to back out and go somewhere else. We might infer that their strategy was to keep people like us away. And you're right. Because chances are that business doesn't have a strategy at all. They're not looking at things in terms of how is it going to get the outcome that they're looking for. They're simply showing up at work every day and not thinking about it. But the fact is that manifests itself as a strategy, and it affects the people who are affected by strategy, which is you, the customer. So even though you may not have put together a formal strategy, the things that you do in your business express a strategy that other people are taking cues from, not just your customers, but your employees and your partners are taking cues from this and acting upon them. So as leaders, it's our job to do a better job of expressing strategy. Now, with a topic like strategy, many of you are jumping to the conclusion that we're going to talk about strategic planning. And yes, we can do that at some point in time. But let me give you some thoughts on strategic planning, because I've conducted many strategic planning sessions. And while I'm an advocate of it, I often find that they don't really yield the results that people are looking for. And the reason is that people do strategic planning for the wrong reasons. First of all, strategic planning is an oxymoron. The two words don't go together. Okay, planning is about analysis. Planning is we look at the data, we extrapolate what we think we're going to happen, and then what are we going to do? Strategy is about synthesis. Strategy is what we want to happen. So if you have a strategy, you're intentionally trying to change what you think will happen. So strategic planning is therefore engineering what we want to happen based on what we think will happen. So if strategic planning to you is sitting around and doing a SWOT analysis and talking about your mission and vision, then you're not actually doing strategic planning, you're doing strategic definition, which is a different thing altogether. Still, it's very valuable. So understand that strategic planning should be engineering what you want to happen based on what you think will happen. And you have to have a firm grip on both of those things in order for it to be successful. Because, drum roll, strategy is not the actions we take. Strategy is the reason we take them. We've all sat in meetings and we've done it. I've done it. You've done it, and said, our strategy is this, and what we're describing is a tactic. Our strategy is to have a lovely office that people can come visit. That's not a strategy, that's a tactic. Our strategy is that we're going to call on all of our customers and try and drive more sales. That is not a strategy, that's a tactic. The logos on the side of your truck are a tactic. The color of cases you choose are a tactic. Marketing is a tactic, but we throw the word strategy around because we want to define a subset of tactics that have a specific purpose. So strategy is not the actions we take. Strategy is the reason we take them. So in broad terms, strategy is your unique approach. Okay? In order to have a strategy, and your strategy can be to be just like everyone else, but ideally you want a strategy which is your unique approach. What's your secret sauce for the thing that you're trying to do? And the more unique or special that strategy is, the more valuable it will be to the right buyer. It's important to understand that strategy doesn't make you attractive to everyone. Your version of unique is not going to work for everyone. Okay? Strategy defines also what you don't do. I like to say strategy is a codified no. Strategy is not how we define yes, it's how we say no. What do we say no to? Now, tactics, which are the things that we often call strategies, are the things we do to execute our strategy. Okay? And good tactics will make your strategy look smarter. So the example I always use at this point, and those of you who have been following me for years have heard this before, but bear with me and I will make it brief. I talk about the Starbucks strategy. It's not coffee. Starbucks strategy is not coffee, it's a tactic. Starbucks strategy, as an outsider looking in, never mind what they have in their strategic planning meetings, but from an outsider looking in, their strategy is to be the place between where you are and where you're going. And what Starbucks did when they started launching stores around the world on every single corner and every hotel lobby was to create a place for people to stop, because we did not used to stop on the way places. If we're going to an appointment, we got in our car, we went to the appointment. Starbucks created this culture where we left a little bit early, we stopped at Starbucks, we got our coffee, and then we moved on. It's the place between where you are and where you're going. Therefore, what tactics make that strategy look smarter? Well, having a nice, comfortable store with armchairs and tables and places to meet and visit sounds like a good tactic. Free Wi-Fi is a good tactic. Playing hip music is a good tactic. Having baristas call you by name is a good tactic. These are all great tactics to make the idea that you're going to stop and inviting you to stop is good. And trust me, the drive-through is a tactic also. you're still stopping, even though you're not getting out of your car and going into the environment. So being the place where you stop on the way somewhere is the strategy. Everything they do that entices you to stop is a good tactic. Now, let's talk about the stuff that you're here to hear about, which are the AV best practice strategies that backfire. These are the things, these are the traditional strategies that almost every AV company uses, regardless of what part of the business you're in, and how they get misapplied and how they backfire. So I'm going to start with the historical classic AV dealer strategy. The idea is you're going to sell or rent boxes. So you can be a rental dealer, or you can be a resale dealer, and you get a dealership agreement with a manufacturer to sell their product. And your job is now to find everybody that needs a box within your region or scope. And back in the day, dealership agreements were territory-based. You were the dealer for a product in a city. And then as the industry grew, they started dividing up those territories and making them smaller and smaller, up to the point where there was no longer any territory. They would have 2 or 3 or 4 or 40 dealers for the same product in a city. So the dealer, losing the exclusivity they have in a territory, would add more products. And the more products they have, the more valuable they would be to a product buyer, a box buyer. So find everyone that needs a box, represent more boxes, get more of their business. Classic AV dealer strategy, okay? However, this doesn't work. I mean, because I don't think you can name anyone right now that is truly doing this successfully anymore, except for, well, Amazon. This doesn't work because product is not a strategy. Without exclusivity and without scarcity, dealerships have very little strategic value. They're simply purveyors that are easily replaceable by other means. Now, what's happened to us in the industry, while this may have been a good strategy 20 or 30 years ago, sourcing and delivering a product is no longer valuable. Finding the right product is. So the inclination was for these box dealers to learn how to be better at service to help customers find the right product. And that's great. That's great. Except that that has all now been replaced by online services that do it. Amazon does a fantastic job of helping me find the product that I'm looking for. If you're pro AV, if you're a pro AV consumer or a prosumer, you know, companies like B&H do an excellent job of helping us navigate through the products. Whether you agree or disagree with the value they provide, the fact is there's enough people who think it's valuable that subscribe to that strategy. So that's why that doesn't work. So here's the example. Here's the classic example, and I still find companies like this. So classic AV reseller, box reseller, they want to sell more boxes. So what do you do in the 21st century? You build an online store. This company built a fantastic online store, except the customers simply would not use it. Now we can get into the details of why they wouldn't use it. Was it was it the user interface? Was it the ease of use? All of those things absolutely came into play. It did everything the customers wanted, but the customers simply would not use it. What they did was they shopped there, then they picked up the phone and they called the company to place the order. All right. So the company ended up adding customer service reps to service the box sales, which of course reduced the margins because now they're having to sell over the phone at the prices that they were advertising online, which didn't involve a CSR. Then what happens is competition builds a better website because there's always somebody who's going to build a better website, and it simply put them out of business. There was no way that they could compete. So a box sales strategy without a better mousetrap simply won't work in this era. Now, having said that, there are viable dealer strategies that you can pursue, and you can overcome the threat of somebody else's great website or great interface. Another takeaway that you're going to have from this webinar is that there are basically 3 types of strategy. There's a cost strategy, there's a differentiation strategy, and there's a focus strategy. So if you want to be a successful box sales dealer or box rental dealer, then you have to figure out how to reduce your costs and pass it on. That is a strategy. That is one of your choices. Or you figure out how to be unique, how to differentiate yourself, how to be better at what you do than everybody else. And it could be having a better shopping interface. Okay? Or the third thing you might do is have a specialization in a vertical market, have a market focus, have a niche. What you can't do is have all three or even two. You have to pick one and you have to focus on it. And we'll see a couple more examples as I go through this of people who failed because they tried to pick more than one strategy and work two strategies at the same time. You want all the customers. I get it. You want to please everyone. Who doesn't? But the fact is you can't. And strategy helps us understand who we're willing to please and who we're willing to say no to. And there's a great time to pause for a question. It says, question is, Tom, you've obviously worked through a failed AV strategy before. How do you recognize the failure and recover? Are there ways to evaluate an impending failure early enough? I guess probably to do that. So yeah, how do you evaluate? So listen to how I present this today, okay? To recognize a failed strategy, look at the actions that they're taking and how many strategies they apply to. So if I go into the average AV company, I will find out that on one hand, they're trying to be cost leaders. On the other hand, they're trying to be unique. And on the other hand, they're trying to focus on a special market. I have a saying, and it may show up later in this presentation, it said, you can't be the best at what you do and sell on price, because that is two different strategies. Being the best at what you do means you won't sell on price. So that tells you who to say no to. You say no to price shoppers. But if you cater to price shoppers, and trust me, you can make a lot of money catering to price shoppers, but you will not spend the energy on trying to be the best at what you do, because that's not what price shoppers are willing to pay for. You can't do both. So thank you for that question. So here's another model. This is the value-added reseller. So many of the box dealers and box rental companies figured out that they needed to do some sort of integration, permanent installations or integrated rentals. They needed to put the parts and pieces together in order to add value so that they could get more margin out of the sale. All right. So the idea is that you own the product or you have preferential access. So you're a dealer or a rental dealer, and you have exclusive intellect or experience or expertise. You have certifications or whatever it might be that make you better at what you're doing. And then in order to make the business more valuable, you offer services such as design and project management for a low fee to help close the deal. So in other words, you try and take the box sale customer at the low margin and you try and move them up into a slightly higher value sale by giving them extra services and providing things that will help make their life easier. All right, sound familiar? This is where most of us end up in the industry. Now, here's the problem with this model. So the strategy inherently conflicts with a cost-plus business model. In other words, the product is dictating the service instead of the service adding a product. So what we're creating is a commodity situation. A commoditizes the product plus the service, and the service is free. So the product is the commodity and the service is free. It becomes a loss leader. You have a huge variable cost, which is labor, and it simply doesn't scale. I mean, we've all done it. The margins of a value-added reseller today, we're looking at companies who are thrilled if they're making 5 or 6% net profit, which might be 20 or 30% gross profit the way I would measure it. Back in the day, back when value-added reselling was actually an effective strategy and the margins on product were really high, those companies were making 50 and 60 points margin and had companies that were making 20% net profit. Okay? As the margins on boxes have come down and you're not capturing the value of the labor, you're basically imploding your model. Okay? The labor has to be a profit center as well as the product. So here's a classic example. A production rental company, they're experts, they have designers, they have project engineering, and they include all of that for free. And honestly, 10 years ago, website said project management is free. I mean, that was the calling card for many of the companies in our industry, that project management is included. We don't charge you extra to do it right, is what people would say. Well, great. Companies that paid more for that service with other companies would flock to that seller. If I was paying extra for project management elsewhere and you're telling me it's for free, I'm going to come to you because the price is lower. So now you, the seller, are competing with non-expert suppliers and not getting any extra money for it. In other words, you're basically undermining your differentiation, which is the expert service, by not charging for it. So we see this a lot. We all do this. We give away too many of our services for free. We give away our expertise for free with the hopes that that will make the customer loyal to us and give us business. But in fact, you already gave away what was valuable. So there are some viable value-added reseller strategies. And again, it's going to fall under one of the three strategies. If you're in a cost leadership strategy, then value-added reselling will work best if you have a no-frills approach. You unbundle all value-added pricing. In other words, every extra thing adds cost. We can look at airlines and see this. There are airlines which are value-added resellers of air travel who unbundle everything. You pay for baggage, you pay for your seat, apparently now you have to pay to put something in an overhead bin. You pay for a cup of coffee. I mean, that's what you do. If you're going to be a cost leader, you have to unbundle all the value add things. And you may personally I don't personally like to travel that way. However, if I were a cost traveler, a budget traveler, that would be very appealing to me. I would figure out how I could pack light and take advantage of those of that pricing. So cost leadership has a certain type of customer, but that also has a business approach that you have to understand and embrace. Now, you can also differentiate as a reseller. For instance, if you have a unique system for delivering projects, you can sell that at a higher margin. And that's what many of us try to do. We try and be a differentiator. We try to have a better process and hope that we can capture that margin. Unfortunately, very often we're more concerned about getting revenue. And remember, strategy has to have a built-in no. So when we see a customer, we want to capture them, and we're not willing to let them go. And so we'll compromise our strategy and end up selling on price, which takes us into cost leadership, which now I have two conflicting strategies. I just undermined my business model. And of course, we can always focus. We can specialize in a vertical market. Be indispensable to one segment. Fantastic strategy, very, very helpful for a lot of companies to understand that if you would focus on one market, it doesn't mean you can't sell to other markets. It doesn't mean you can't sell to other verticals, but you focus your energy and your marketing and your sales and your processes and your operations to a specialized vertical, you will win more of that market share and do better. And that's a fantastic strategy. So there's a way to have a viable value-added strategy. All right. So the third one I want to talk about is geography as a strategy. And many people I get this call actually fairly often saying we want to expand. I want to have more offices and more locations. That's how I'm going to grow my business. Either I want to buy a company so I can have an office in another city, or I'm going to open an office in another city and expand my brand, as they like to say. So they want to, the theory is I'm going to put myself closer to my buyers. I'm going to follow the business from my region into other regions. I want to be able to normalize my pricing. I don't want to have to tell my client it's going to cost more in this city than that city. I want to be able to say, hey, I've got offices in those cities, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. There's some good thinking behind the value of geography. But here's why it generally doesn't work. Most of the geographic expansion models I've reviewed think that it is a customer-focused strategy when in fact it's actually a cost strategy. The reason you open an office in another city is to reduce your costs, not to reduce costs to the buyer. Okay. Now, it does have some benefits for the buyer. Don't get me wrong. We are always looking out for the buyer, but the real benefit is to the seller. The reason you open office in another city is to reduce your costs. Okay. Once you start leveraging location, it reduces the customer spending expectation. And this is just psychology. If you tell your client that you have an office in another city, they automatically hear, oh, then I can do business for a lower price in another city. That I no longer have to pay for the distance that we're traveling, for instance, which happens a lot in our business. And if the customer has work that is not in one of your geographic locations, because you've expressed a geography strategy and that you've told them geography matters, they will automatically look for a new supplier in the new city that they're going to because you aren't there. So you've taught them to shop around in case their geography needs don't line up with your geography strategy. So this is why I see many of these enterprises fail. And the way I describe a geography strategy is 1 + 1 = 1.8. You're taking a business, you're doubling it, you're doubling your expense, and you're only getting 0.8 worth of the benefit from it. So adding another office, even though it's identical, is not necessarily going to double your business if you're using geography as the selling point. So here's an example. There's been enough M&As that you can guess which one this might be, but this has happened too many times. Merger and acquisition, roll-up strategy, private equity company buying lots of companies, focusing on acquisitions in key markets. They acquired about a dozen companies. They started talking about geography to their client base. They said, hey, here's the advantage we have. We're in all of these places. What happened immediately was the margins on their longtime clients started to plummet because customers expected a price break in 12 cities. So they could no longer recover the cost of trucking. They could no longer travel crews or experts to get to the right places. Basically, all of their margins flattened out. And because they thought they were doing a revenue growth strategy by being in more geographies, they had neglected the cost side of their business and didn't manage their costs or have any geographical advantages of cost. So geography is a cost strategy. That's what it comes down to. So if you can reduce your costs and pass it on, geography is good. All right. And pass it on, maybe pass it on to you, right? If you can choose geography and do differentiation, the way you differentiate geography is anybody that went to business school has heard of GLOCAL, which is global plus local. So the GLOCAL strategy is you move into a market and you tailor your business to that market. In other words, you don't duplicate the office in New York and make it look just like the office in Seattle, much less the office in Singapore. You make an office that works in that marketplace and has the market strategy and the operational and sales approach that works for that market. Oh, by the way, the pricing strategy may be different there as well. Okay, so you can differentiate geographically in every market, and that is a geographic strategy. Or you may take a focus and be an expert in a vertical market, in which case having multiple locations working in one vertical means you're capturing more of the market share. So say, for instance, your market is, your vertical market is higher education, right? So you put offices that cater primarily to higher education and different geographic markets. You're catering to one vertical. That is your value. That is your niche. The fact that you have multiple offices just means that you have a business that's geographically diversified, but it doesn't really have any effect on the customer because the vertical is actually local. Fourth strategy. And now this is the one that's going to hurt because this is what a lot of folks have done and where I've spent a lot of time in the past 10 years is companies that are adding vertical services. So they add some kind of a strategy. They add design or creative or something like that, whether you're a systems integrator or a live event, they're adding some intellectual property elements to the business. That's fairly typical. The idea is to sell the core service. We're going to sell integration, but by the way, we can do design for you. We can sell integration, but also we're going to do planning, strategic planning for spaces. We're going to do long range utilization planning for your office space or your campus classrooms, that sort of thing. In live events, we do creative, or we add production, we do content. Scenic or lighting design. We add these things, and the idea is that's something we can tack on top of our core service, which is the rental or the installation. Okay, sound familiar? All right, gang. Sorry, this often doesn't work, and here's why. When we add these higher services, when we add these design things and creative things and strategic things, the buyer for those services is a different buyer than your core service. Okay? You can't use the same sales interface and expect great success. You may get some success, and I'm sure you have examples of where it seemed to have worked, but to really prosper with a strategy, you need to have a different sales interface and a different go-to-market strategy, because it's a different buyer. And selling at the higher level means that the core business that has always been your mainstay and who your heroes in your company identify with is now a secondary service. It has to tag along behind the new higher level service. So it's a completely different value proposition to sell at that level. You have to create a new level of credibility, which you're going to be doing from scratch. You're going to be competing against people and companies who have been selling at that level, and then letting you do the subcontract work for the transactional piece of it. If you sell strategy or creative as an add-on, it's very self-serving. I mean, just look at it. Oh, it's a tag-on. You're going to design something that will make you more money on the transaction. Okay, so it has some positioning problems with it. So there's a lot of reasons it doesn't work. I'll give you the classic example is the live event stager adds creative design and production. And there's probably 5, 7, 10 people on this call who think I'm talking about them. And yes, I'm talking about all of you. All right. Live event stager adds creative design and production. They introduce it to the channel as an upsell. We'd like to add, can we add creative? Can we do your PowerPoint for you? Can we create some banners, do some logos for you? Can we add some entertainment? And it's all put in there as an upsell. And in order to get the customer to sample their wonderful creative services, well, they're going to discount it dramatically, give it away for free, throw it in some way, which introduces a lack of credibility immediately into the channel, because low price equals low value. Okay? You end up having major margin losses because now you're giving away a valuable intellectual property for little or no money, but you have to keep delivering it because the customer is going to buy again because they just got a deal. All right, so it becomes this snowball running down a hill, and creating bigger and bigger losses for you. The problem is, as I said before, is that we're selling at the wrong level. So if you want to have a viable strategy of adding vertical services, then you have to lead with the highest level of service that you have, and then choose a strategy for that service. So if your highest level of service is event design and content creation, all the stuff that goes with that is a high-level creative, then that's what you lead with. That's what you go to market with. That's what you walk into somebody's office with. That's what you pitch first. And you come at that with one of 3 strategies. You come at it as a cost leader, okay, which means that you can have tiers of service, and that's typically what a cost leadership in a creative environment model would do, is that you've got the A, B, and C level tiers of service. As I like to say, it's how many yeses are you going to pay for. You come in as a differentiator. In other words, you have a unique project system, or you have a unique customer experience, or something that makes you very, very special and valuable to your target audience. Or you focus, you work in one vertical market. If you're going to be the creative services company that does live event production and you only focus on, the church market, for instance, okay, that's a specialty. You're going to have more credibility in that marketplace and therefore be more valuable. And then you have other services that you can offer to that same market, but your primary service starts at a very high level. So that's how you can make a viable strategy out of that. So let's spend a couple more minutes here to talk about how to think about strategies. And those of you that done any business school at all just saw Porter's generic strategies. And I introduced them here because I think when it comes to strategy, if we go back to the fundamentals, that we're going to have a lot more success. I think we've confused ourselves by misusing the word strategy and using it in too many ways. And honestly, we're all smarter when we say the word strategy, right? That's how you get to be the smart person in the meeting. Say, well, we're going to have a better vertical sales strategy, and all of a sudden you're smart. But in fact, it's leading us down the path because we need to get back to what is the actual business strategy that we're building off of. And if we make the mistake of straddling two strategies, or worse, three, we're going to run into trouble. So we need to either be cost leaders, we need to be differentiated, or we need to focus on a vertical market. All right? As we say, you can't cross the beams. So there's three beams you don't want to cross. Ugly things happen when you do. So if we cross the streams, we're going to get into trouble. Look for that in yourself. Have some honest conversations amongst yourselves about whether your business is really focused on one strategy or you're trying to do two. Now, here's how we can reduce some strategic mistakes. First of all, choose a master strategy. There are no wrong strategies. You can be a cost leader, you can be a differentiator, you can have focus. None of them are right, none of them are wrong. Simply just pick one. Pick the one where you think you're going to have the most success, where you have more assets that lead to that. It doesn't mean that you're going to give up the other business. It just means that you're going to emphasize a certain kind of business a little bit more. Now, outside of that strategy, as you look around you, there are external forces that you're trying to counteract. Okay? You may have competitors who are, using geography or using marketing tools or using sales strategies that you're fighting. They may have preferential dealer agreements that you don't have. They may have certifications that you don't have. There's a lot of things that they can be doing. Figure out what those things are that are threats to your strategy. And if you narrow it down to one master strategy, you will find that there are fewer external forces threatening that strategy. Now, you're going to work on counteracting those strategies. So within your master strategy, you can develop a business strategy. And then you define the tactics that support the business strategy. Now, that's a long way of saying now you need to sit down and do the real work of strategic thinking, which I'll talk more about in just a few minutes. And then once you have that strategy, the business strategy that works underneath your master strategy, or within it, I should say, then you can focus on tactics. And if you want to call them strategies, that's fine. We have a geography strategy. That's fine. I'm not going to punish you for that. It's not like you used the word literally incorrectly. Okay, it's not a big deal. Call it a strategy. Understand, though, that these are sub-strategies. Okay, now we're 2 tiers below your master strategy. And you can have a sub-strategy on geography, marketing, customer experience, pricing, quality control, logistics, whatever is going to be valuable to your buyer and counteract the market forces that you think are threatening you in your strategy. One more little exercise I want to take you through here before we go back to get you to post some questions and start thinking about those questions. If you want to define your strategic value in your marketplace, in other words, if you're having a hard time seeing where you're valuable, and many of you do, I coach a lot of owners and executives who have trouble seeing their strategic value because they're too close to it. I get that. Here's a way to look at it. Most of you are project-based. You're selling projects, whether they're rental, live event projects, installed projects, but most things are projects. There's a level of project management involved to carry it through. There's a period of time in which you're going to do business, right? Your projects are somewhere between very, very simple and very, very complex. Okay. The more simple it is, the more your value is going to be in process if it's a planned event. If it's last minute, your value becomes in capacity. So for your projects, simple to complex, planned or last minute, look at your book of business. If a majority of your business is last minute and relatively simple, then your value in what you do, your strategic value to the customer, is the fact that you are available to do it. Your capacity is what's valuable. Okay? And by valuable, I mean that all things being equal, you can charge more because you have the capacity to deliver this project at the best level, at the appropriate level. Okay? There's a difference in capacity and being able to do it and being able to do it well and do it consistently. Now, likewise, if it's a simple project and it's long-term planned, your value is simply in the process of delivering consistently. It doesn't add as much margin. If it's a planned project and it's rather complex, your value is going to be, your contribution is going to be your expertise. You're going to make the complex work over time, so you can charge more for your expertise. But, and as many of you are telling me, more of your business is last minute and it's increasingly complex, then where you can create value is an outcome. What's the outcome? What's the deliverable for the customer? That's what's going to make you more valuable than a competitor. If you can consistently deliver a better outcome, if you can define the outcome better for the customer, you're going to be more value. So that's how we create value with strategy. So think about that. Think about your business. And I recognize that you may have multiple channels in your business and lines of business that have different strategic characteristics. Know that when you go to the table or when you talk about marketing, that you may have a different answer depending on which line of business you're actually talking about. So we're going to have some time for some questions. I'm going to talk a little bit more, and I'll come to your questions in just a minute. I've already got a couple popped up. Thank you for asking the question. So use that Q&A box. I'm going to do a little bit of quick marketing here. Jumpstart workshops for 2018. We've had very successful workshops in 2016 and 17. We're expanding the number of workshops we're doing this year. We have a strategy workshop. Surprise, we're doing a strategy webinar. I wonder what Tom was thinking. Registration closes for that next Monday. So if you're interested in working on your business strategy, figuring out what you should be working on, what your master strategy should be, sign up for that workshop. We still have some seats left. Registration closes on Monday, and you can go to my website, go to Jumpstart, and find that, or I'm sure you've got hundreds of emails from me talking about it. In May, we're going to talk about operations. In August, we're going to do marketing and business development, which we did for 30 companies last year. It was very well received, so we're going to reprise that. I think that will be a standard. And in December, we're going to do management and finance. We'll be talking about exit strategies and KPIs. We'll also be talking about leadership and how to help your company grow. So if you'll see, there's a sequence in these workshops that all tie together, and they're really designed for owners and their second in command or person who's focused on that particular area to come learn more about how they can develop their business. If you haven't heard about these, then make sure you're on my mailing list. Go to my website, trstimson.com. Click on download your free ebook, because I'm going to give you a free ebook and I'll sign you up for the Intentional Success newsletter. Learning to Expect Better is my ebook. You can also buy it on Amazon if you just like to have a hard copy. And hey, why not buy another book on Amazon? I'd love that. And you'll get the Intentional Success newsletter, which is every Monday morning. You'll get a dose of common sense business advice to help you make your business better. Cool, right? All right. Having said all that, schedule a call. I love talking to folks. If you want to talk about your business, I do free consultative calls. Just go to the website, go to the contacts, schedule a call. I'd be happy to talk with you. You can ask me anything you want. It'll schedule a 20-minute call, but I'm very generous with my time. And if there's a way I could help you out, please take advantage of that. I love giving back to the industry. Next webinar in March 21st will be When Operations Managers Go Rogue. The best ideas you need to try. And you can sign up for that at trstimson.com webinars. It's up now. And as you know, I'm an old operations guy. I love process. I love great ideas. I want to share the ideas that I think are really awesome and that I think more people should try. So that'll be fun. Okay, once again, let's thank our sponsors. You guys are awesome. Thanks again, DWP, for letting me hang out here. So here's some takeaways for you, and then I'm going to answer your questions. All right. So I already said, strategy is the art of evolving faster than average. Average doesn't get us anywhere. Evolving on average keeps us in the same place because the world around us is evolving. So don't turn your nose up the idea of evolving and evolving more quickly, because if you're not growing, you're dying and you're being left behind. And it's not the actions we take. Strategy is not the actions we take. It's the reason we take them. If you can't define why you get up every morning and what your business is trying to accomplish, how are your employees going to know how to make the right decisions for you? And if you don't have a no, you don't have a strategy. Because if you don't know when to say no, then you don't know what business that you're actually in. And you can't be the best at what you do and sell on price. There it is. I told you it would come up again. So let me answer a couple of questions here. And looks like we'll be able to wrap up a little bit early, give you some time back. Thanks for being here. Question is, what are the key principles of accepting a failed strategy and recovering? Key principles. Okay. Accepting a failed strategy. If I knew how to get people to accept failure, I'd be Tony Robbins and making millions of dollars preaching to thousands of people over and over again. Accepting a failed strategy, let's identify a failed strategy first. So let's change it to that. To identify a failed strategy, take a look at why you win the business that you win. So evaluate the customers, evaluate the business you win, where you're having successes, and analyze why you're good there. If you can identify your customers, which is, by the way, the hardest thing we will ever do in business, is identify who our customers actually are. If you can describe your target buyer, your ideal buyer, that's huge. When they buy from you, why do they buy? I suggest that is your strategy. Anybody else that buys from you for different reasons are your failed strategies. Now, recovery, embrace your strategy. There are no wrong strategies. Just pick one. Pick the master strategy and then do things that make it better. And there's a question following up to this. And it's a long question, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. But basically it's saying, well, what about the customers? Do we fire the customers we don't have? And so firing the customers is a very popular presenter topic. I think Tom Peters got us all hung up on that in the 90s, talking about fire your customers. This isn't about firing customers. What I tell folks about strategy is, because you choose a strategy doesn't mean you're abandoning customers. It doesn't mean you're abandoning the way of doing business that you've always had. What it means is you're going to put your focus somewhere else. So I'm going to focus more on the things that I'm trying to accomplish, and I'm going to de-emphasize the other things. So if I'm moving into a differentiation strategy, if I'm establishing that as my master strategy, I'm going to be better at differentiating, and I'm going to do things to support that. But I have a customer base or some subset of my customers that we've traditionally sold to on cost. I'm not abandoning those customers. I'm just de-emphasizing them. So I'll be a little bit less negotiable on cost. I'll dig in a little bit harder. I'll be willing to say no. I'll be willing to lose a piece of business. Or better yet, I will work harder on turning them into differentiation buyers. Okay? Turn them away from price shopping and turn them into value shopping, and make that your sales focus, right? Let's see. I've got another question here. When will the slide deck? Yeah, the slide deck won't be shared afterwards, but the webinar will be shared afterwards. So please feel free to watch the webinar again. And I got one last question I'm going to fit in here, not to compare, but might be an interesting counter to the value add, give it away conversation. What would you say was the original strategy of Google and Amazon? Okay, well, hey, this sounds like a parlor game. I'll try. Google was always about sharing information, and long term, I do believe they understood that they were going to be able to monetize the algorithms to collect information. So Amazon actually had the same approach. Amazon was doing the same thing. They were going to create a model and then build the demand for it. They were going to monetize it later. And of course, Amazon famously didn't make money for years. And now we can't do anything without them, and we probably can't do anything without Google either. So they invested in a future of solving a problem. So what is their strategy? Well, Amazon's is not cost, is it? It's differentiation. Google's is not focus, it's differentiation. So they both created differentiators to make themselves valuable to a specific customer. And who is Google differentiating to? Well, people who aren't Bing users, I guess, or people who aren't using Yahoo for search, right? So they're creating a different value, they're differentiating themselves, and now they're monetizing it quite well because they have a captured audience. All right, so they differentiated for an audience, they have a captured audience, and oh, by the way, now they have another business which is not capturing an audience, it's leveraging that audience. So whereas Amazon's strategy, I think, was more of a focus strategy and was to develop and create the online buyer by creating the better mousetrap. Perhaps that's differentiation, perhaps that's focus, we can argue that. But they have another strategy, which was then to monetize that. So one model business is the infrastructure that Amazon built, which you can rent, by the way. You can rent space on Amazon. You can use their interface to do your business. They sell that. So that is one business. And the other business is the products they resell. Another business is the distribution system that they've built behind it. So they have multiple lines of business. Each one might have a different strategy, a different master strategy. So interesting question. One more here. Should your strategy be clear to your customers, helping to set expectations? Should your customers be asked if you're successful or failing in your strategy? That's a great question. There's a school of thought that says we present a strategy to the customers in terms that they understand. And those are typically what we call a brand strategy or a brand statement. And we can express our value to them in brand terms, but we don't have to explain to them what our strategy is. You look at Coca-Cola and Pepsi, all right? Basically, they have been trading back and forth 1% of market share forever. Neither company grows significantly because the market's not getting any bigger. And there's 1% of the market, or it's actually much less than that will go back and forth between Pepsi and Coke depending on the marketing. Okay, so does Coca-Cola need to tell you that its strategy is marketing? No, Coca-Cola wants to tell you that Coca-Cola makes you feel good when you drink it, or whatever it is their brand strategy is. That's what they're going to focus on. So I think it's a convoluted way to answer your question, but no, I don't think we need to explain to our customers what our mission, vision, or strategy is. What we need to explain to customers is things that are important to them, which is why you're valuable, how you're going to make their life better, how you're going to improve their condition in valuable ways. That's what they care about. They don't care about how you think you're going about doing it. So that, I think, is a great place to end this, but thank you guys so very much for participating. That was a lot of fun. If you have any more questions, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer them. Schedule a call via my website. Happy to talk to you about it. You will get a notification tomorrow about this, how to view the webinar archive, which will be up for a few weeks, and then it will just vaporize and disappear. So watch it soon, share it with your friends. And if you're interested in the workshop, March 6th and 7th in Dallas, we have some seats available. We will come dive deep into strategy and work on your business. And you'll meet some great folks, and we'll have a lot of fun doing it in a pretty good venue. So thank you, everybody. And we will, we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye.